Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going on a fascinating trip through automotive history, exploring the world of cars with plastic bodies. And no, we're not talking about a cheap toy from the dollar store. We're talking about real, road-going machines that swapped steel and aluminum for plastics, composites, and polymers. Some were groundbreaking, some were quirky, and some were outright misunderstood. But every single one of them has a unique story to tell, from rust-proof longevity to manufacturing hacks, from clever weight-saving strategies to cost-cutting experiments. Before we start, let's dive deep into 7 of the most memorable plastic-bodied cars in history.
7. Chevrolet Corvette, C1 and C2 era, fiberglass bodies.
When Chevrolet launched the Corvette in 1953, it shocked the automotive world. Here was America's first mass-produced sports car, and it wasn't made of steel. Instead, it had body panels crafted from fiberglass-reinforced polyester, a material virtually unheard of in mass-market automotive design at the time. The reason was as practical as it was revolutionary. Steel shortages and high tooling costs after the Korean War meant GM needed a quick, affordable way to bring the Corvette to life. Fiberglass allowed designers to create swooping, jet-inspired shapes without the massive expense of steel dies. Owners found the cars lighter and resistant to rust, which was a blessing for long-term preservation. But fiberglass had its quirks. It could flex slightly, making panel gaps tricky to perfect, and repairing cracks required specialist knowledge. I once met a C2 Corvette restorer who told me he'd rather completely rebuild a small block V8 than try to get the hood perfectly flush with the fenders. With steel, you can hammer it. With fiberglass, you have to coax it. 6. Reliant Robin, United Kingdom, 1970s, 2000s. If you've ever watched British comedy shows, you've probably seen the Reliant Robin, often tipped over for laughs. But behind the jokes was a clever little car with a full fiberglass body. Built by Reliant in the UK, the Robin was designed to be affordable, lightweight, and easy to maintain. Because it weighed under 450 kilograms, it could be driven with a motorcycle license in the UK. The fiberglass body kept costs low for the small-scale manufacturer and eliminated rust, a serious benefit in Britain's damp climate. Of course, its 3-wheeled layout made it somewhat interesting to drive at speed. Stability wasn't its strong suit, but around town it was nippy, cheap to run, and full of personality. A family friend once told me about his uncle's Robin, which he used as a pub runner in the village. He kept it polished like a classic Jaguar and would lovingly patch up any cracks with resin after small mishaps. He swore it handled fine, as long as you didn't take corners like a maniac. 5. DeLorean DMC, 12, 1981 to 1983. Most people know the DeLorean from Back to the Future, but fewer know about its unusual construction. Underneath those famous brushed stainless steel panels was a composite underbody, a mix of fiberglass and resin bonded to a steel frame. This hybrid approach gave the DeLorean its space-age look while keeping weight in check. The plastic/composite underbody carried much of the structure, while the stainless outer skin was purely cosmetic and could be replaced if damaged. Owners loved that the stainless finish never rusted, though it could pick up fingerprints and scratches. The plastic parts, however, sometimes suffered from UV exposure, causing discoloration or brittleness in certain trim pieces. I once chatted with a DeLorean owner who told me their elderly neighbor would stop by just to admire the car. "It's like having a spaceship parked outside," the neighbor said, and honestly, they weren't wrong. For Saturn S Series, 1990s, 2000s. When GM launched Saturn in 1990, they wanted a fresh, consumer-friendly brand that did things differently. One of the biggest selling points? Dent-resistant polymer body panels. Instead of stamped steel doors and fenders, Saturn used flexible thermoplastic panels mounted to a steel space frame. This meant no rust on those panels, far fewer parking lot dings, and simple panel replacement after a bump. Customers loved this feature, especially people who lived in crowded cities or apartment complexes. One woman I knew drove the same Saturn sedan for over a decade, parked in a chaotic shared lot. While her neighbors' cars had battle scars from shopping carts and careless door swings, hers looked showroom new. The downsides? The panels could fade differently than metal parts, and the hollow thunk when you closed the door wasn't as satisfying as steel. Still, for the practical-minded buyer, it was a game changer. 3. Smart Fortwo. The Smart Fortwo was designed from the ground up for urban life, and its body reflected that mission. The core was a rigid steel safety cell called the Tri-Dion, wrapped in removable thermoplastic panels. This meant that if you scraped the side on a concrete post in a tight parking space, you didn't need a body shop. You could just unbolt the panel and swap in a new one. Even color changes were possible without repainting, which gave Smart an almost customizable gadget vibe. I met a delivery driver in Paris who swore by this system. He told me he'd scraped his Smart on a delivery run, picked up a replacement panel at the dealer, and had it back on the car in under an hour, then went straight back to work. 2. Pontiac Fiero, 1984 to 1988. The Pontiac Fiero was GM's first mid-engine sports car, and also one of its most misunderstood. Beneath its sleek shape was a steel space frame covered in plastic body panels made from sheet-molded compound, SMC, and other composites. The use of plastic let Pontiac experiment with shapes and curves without investing in expensive steel tooling. It also made the car lighter, which complemented its mid-engine layout. Early Fieros had some mechanical reliability issues and the occasional engine bay fire, but the body itself was well regarded for resisting rust and being easy to repair or replace. Over time, the Fiero found a second life with kit car builders, who swapped panels to create everything from Ferraris to futuristic one-offs. I once visited a Fiero owner's meet, and it was like a car design festival. Every car looked different, yet they all shared the same basic underpinnings. The plastic panels turned them into rolling canvases. 1. Morgan Plus 8 and other Morgan models. Morgan is a name steeped in tradition. Known for hand-building cars in England with ashwood frames, Morgan has gradually integrated modern materials into its designs, including lightweight composites and plastics for certain panels. These composites allow Morgan to keep its flowing, vintage-inspired shapes while meeting safety and performance requirements. In many ways, they represent the bridge between old-world craftsmanship and modern engineering. A Morgan owner once described sitting in their car as time travel. The wood frame creaked, the smell of leather and petrol filled the cabin, and the exterior gleamed. A mix of tradition and innovation. And that's for today's video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Got thoughts, questions, or video ideas? Drop them down in the comments. I read every single one,